Good morning and afternoon to everybody. I hope you've had a good 24 hours. It's been about 48 since I've last seen you. And since I have last seen you, there's been some new truth drips that have come out. And what's funny is sometimes something will open up a Pandora's box to something else, which is what I believe is happening here with the exposure of what's been going on with this coroner's office. And not just with the Chris Skinner case, but various other cases. And we can also include what had pretty much happened even in North Carolina with Micah Miller, because we weren't pleased with the outcome there as well. So we're going to go over right now. Hold on for 1 second. Let me just see something. Okay. We're going to go over number 18, 19, and 20. And then I would like to go over a few things that I think come out of this that expose a bigger problem that's going on throughout some states within our nation. And this is including South Carolina. So, okay, so this is number 18.
Everything that his wife said fits with what we could see and what we were told. So we had no reason to believe that they were wrong.
At the time, they were told it was an accidental drowning.
There's, because of her saying he does fall asleep and the chair will jerk, or he may wake up groggy and move the chair. There was no reason for us to believe that it was anything other than an accident. Myself, the detective, the lieutenant, everyone that with the police department and myself, there was no reason for us to believe it was anything other than an accident. But by the time I was notified by the hospital, they didn't notify me until the death occurs. Mm-hmm. So it was, and I was on a death at that time. So it was hours even after they called me that I even got to the hospital. So by then, and I spoke to the detective, she had seen the video, she had spoken to everyone, and she gave me her rundown of what had taken place. So I didn't see the video until this week.
Okay. I want to stop there for a moment because of what I had mentioned earlier. Now, there are two separate definitions for professionalism, one being in healthcare and the other one being in law enforcement. Now, in healthcare, evidence and literature suggests that professionalism is a set of attributes including empathy, resilience, life-work balance, and punctuality and communication skill. Okay? But in professionalism with anything related to healthcare, which would include the death of a human being, there should be competence in habitual and judicious use of communication knowledge, technical skills, clinical reasoning, emotions, values, reflection, and daily practice for the benefit of an individual and community being served. This is according to the Association of American Medical Colleges, AAMC, and it's the Medical School Objectives Projected Writing Group in 1999. Now, professionalism demands placing the interest of patients above those of the physician, setting and maintaining the standards of competence and integrity, and providing expert advice to society on matters of health. The principles and responsibilities of medical professionalism must be clearly understood by both the profession and society. Essential to this contract is public trust in physicians, which depends on the integrity of both individual physicians and the whole profession. Now, that's according to the American Board of Internal Medicine Certification Program, talking about ethics and professionalism back in 2003. Now, before you jump on me and say a coroner is not a medical professional, that's my point. There are about, still in this country, and we're going to talk about the history of that, there are still a handful of states using coroners. These are not law enforcement trained or medically trained people handling death investigations. And as we could see from this, they are not equipped. Not equipped. And the professionalism is subpar. Okay, now for law enforcement, okay, professionalism is defined as the exercise of developed skill and proficiency at some task, the broad police task of crime solving, crime prevention, and social control in a pluralistic society with complex social problems requiring the development of exceptional skills in a number of areas. Scientific advances in evidence analysis and computer technology, along with the development of specialized professions in criminalistics, having contributed to a high degree of professionalism in crime-solving tasks. Police management practices also have reached an impressive degree of professional performance. The social control aspect of police work, however, are believed to lack professionalism. Police skills necessary to prevent crime, deter destructive behavior are lacking in most frontline police personnel. Now, this is from the Office of Justice Programs of the U.S. Department of Justice. They are even saying, okay, that there is missing professionalism, because we could see that also in the police department and detective that handled Chris's case. Now, the model called the 5 Eyes of Police Professionalism for Frontline Leaders is a leadership and influence model by which police leaders can assess their own character and development and can influence and lead others. Remember, the coroner referred to her as a leader, the deputy coroner. The crucial personal character traits are integrity, intellect, initiative, industry, and impact. Okay? And then after that, we will go into the history. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because I really believe a Pandora's box has been opened in regards to we can no longer have people who are not trained either in law enforcement or, remember, in Chris's case, the people who found him in the pool, the professionals, were medically trained. And then they transported him to even more medically trained professionals. The person who probably called the time of death for him was an MD. From that point, the whole reason why this 40-something-year-old man and his chair were in a pool should have been investigated by someone who had some sort of training, it should have been a very high up if you're going to be a medical examiner, coroner, which is combined in a majority of states here in the United States. She lacks both. And that includes her cousin, Robert. There is no medical training, no law enforcement training. So these people should be bagging groceries at Publix, not handling death investigations. And this is proof.
I didn't talk to her about any of that because remember he died so many hours later and that she'd already been interviewed by the police department. She just lied to the police and said that this was not anything other than an accident, and that there was no other family that could say anything different. And that was a lie.
So which one is it? 1. Did what his wife, Susie, say fit what happened? 2. They had no reason not to believe it was anything but an accident because Susie said so. 3. Chief Deputy Coroner did not speak to Susie, did not watch the video, but made a determination off of a person's relayed info. 4. Susie lied to the police and they know this but have a hard time admitting this.
Okay, so let's go back. This professionalism that this woman was supposed to show were supposed to be traits of integrity, intellect, initiative, industry, and impact. Do you see any of that in those 4 things? Those 4 separate things that she has said to the Skinner family, or she has said outright throughout this case. She can't seem to talk honest. She talks out of both sides of her mouth. There's no integrity in this. None.
Willard says this year Skinner's sister gave new evidence that may mean the death was suicide instead of an accident. But key video evidence is still being analyzed by the FBI.
I mean, even though they will know that you were interviewed, doesn't need to be that it's your fault or your dad's fault or anybody's fault. It is that other things came to light, and now we've got different evidence, and we have to look at it in a different way.
The other things that came to evidence had nothing to do with the Skinner family. The other we've talked about this before, but obviously this woman needs to be told over and over. It was the outcry of the podcasters and the social media content creators that caused them to reopen the case. It was the pressure from the public. The evidence that she speaks of is the witnesses. This has nothing to do with the Skinner family, but witnesses who spoke to Chris directly and the mindset he was in. That's the evidence, okay? Including the witness who heard John Paul Miller talk about remote controlling Chris's chair.
I gotcha. And
because that's important.
Also,
and it doesn't have to say that it came from you. It's just evidence.
Right. And the reason why this is a secondary victimization is because we've got people who are trained, not even trained beyond somebody who could be a receptionist at an office, handling some of the most important. I've said this before, from birth to death, only a professional should call the shots. And if there's a death that happened before time that would be, for somebody like Chris, okay, I get it that he was in a wheelchair, he was wheelchair bound, but he did show signs of life. He was able to talk. He was able to move around. He liked socializing. He had friends. He was a motivational speaker. This is someone who you did not expect at that age to die. So, and in the circumstance he's found, which is in a pool, that would make anybody go, this should be investigated. Yes, Auntie M, I'm gonna put your comment up here. Let me just do that real quick because it needs to be said. She does that because she knows she's full of crap. That's why she does it. She's full of crap. In this, I've been watching a little bit of the Scott Spivey case. You could even see there she's protecting corruption. We're going to go into that. I'm going to go into why there's still states that have these unprofessional, untrained people still involved in death investigation. And of course, I do ask, please, we're going to go into number 19 now. Please sign that petition. Let me get to number 19. Oh, let's see. Alrighty. And forgive me for keep interrupting, but in some cases it needs to be done. Okay. All right, here we go.
Has the Horry County Chief Deputy Coroner misled Chris Skinner's family? Does she provide another statement indicating she doesn't want Chris Skinner's sister blamed? Does she ask for Skinner's sister's assistance in obtaining witnesses and evidence? Let's listen and see.
So that's the whole reason for us being on the same page. And if there's FBI agent involvement, I want to know who that is, because I'd like to have them there present, because I'd like for her to see that, this is not just Myrtle Beach City or Tamra. This is bigger than that.
Again, I hear you saying that can't just.
I need a list of witnesses. Not just you, not just your dad, but his friend, because I don't know what the police department has in their report as of yet, because I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
So let's go. First of all, the FBI, which is highly trained, is not going to want to sit alongside some woman who has no training whatsoever, whether it be medical or law enforcement. She has none. And she failed the first time that she investigated this death investigation. So why would they want to sit amongst her and this crooked police department when they didn't do their job? They're not going to want to sit amongst her. Trust me. That's number one. Number two, you've said time and time again that you didn't look at the video. You didn't look at the police report. So what the hell are you doing? I bet you get your paycheck on time. That I bet. What do you do then? What is your job? Because anybody with half a brain cell would have said this death needed to be investigated. Okay? Anybody. Okay? A high school diploma graduate would have looked at this situation and said, man in a chair in the pool, something needs to be investigated. And as far back as 2021, you haven't looked at the police report? Look at the date that she's saying this, January 10th, 2025. And you came up with a conclusion in manner of death? This is not a person who should be in this position. I'm very sorry.
Only spoke to the detective. So I need to know who those are so that I can make sure they're interviewed, and we can get everybody scheduled for the same week.
So she only spoke to the Myrtle Beach Police Department. Now, we all know they live in John Paul Miller's pocket. So the detective is going to tell her what to put down according to John Paul's narrative, and that's exactly what she did. So I believe, and I'm going to talk about that after these videos are done, that we're coroners that are still in these states, South Carolina being included, there's only a handful of them, okay, is the reason why they are still in their positions is to protect corruption. And for no other reason. They are there to protect corrupt police departments, corrupt police chiefs, corrupt sheriff departments, corrupt sheriff themselves, corrupt politicians, corrupt businessmen, and criminality in the area. There is no other reason to keep this unprofessional, untrained moron in her position. 2020 friggin' 5, and you haven't seen any of the police reports, and you haven't seen the video, and you actually came up with a manner of death because of what a detective told you? By the way, according to South Carolina law, because he was a vulnerable adult, you are supposed to go there and investigate not only the area where he was located and found, but his home. You failed. Let's move on. Let's move on, because I'm just going to get more and more angry. So here we go. She wanted from Tamara, Chris's sister. Why? Chris's sister's not getting paid to do this. Why does she have to do her job? Go to the Myrtle Beach police death report on Chris Skinner and go get the friggin' witness statements. How can a coroner make a manner of death determination without reviewing the police reports, with witness statements, and without reviewing the video evidence? I absolutely agree. Because she is untrained, unprofessional. She was put in that place to protect corruption. The end.
Everything that his wife said fits with what we could see and what we were told. So we had no reason to believe that.
See or told what? See or told what? She didn't see anything. She wasn't told anything but by one detective.
They were wrong.
As the wait continues, Coroner Robert Edge publicly backing Willard, telling me the petition for her removal is false claims.
She's number one. She's our leader.
She's our leader. You are the coroner. I don't know what citizens elected you in. I doubt highly they did. I really do. I think the only people that elected you in, brother, was the ones who wanted you to protect their corruption. And you got your cousin involved as deputy coroner to help with that protection. Because the two of you are as useless as tits on a bull.
Really. She keeps everything moving in a good direction.
Dude, I have never seen such absolute, it's just the epitome of corruption. I don't care how you put it. And number 20, I had to laugh. I had to laugh through it on how clueless these people are. But they won't be for long, because this is getting national attention. This is getting the attention of the Justice Department. We're going to go over that in a second. Forgive me for keep interrupting. You know, when I watch content creators and they play a video and they keep interrupting the video, I get annoyed. So if I'm annoying you, please forgive me. But it's just something that has to be said in the in between. The deputy coroner is not supposed to be the leader. The coroner is really supposed to be the leader of the coroner's office, and she answers to him. They've got it all wrong. I could really get nasty here, but I'm not. So I'm just gonna, let me just play this.
which you can count on at 11 starts now.
First at 11, a family member connected with one of two high-profile cases under investigation in Horry County is speaking only to News 13. Thank you for joining us at 11. I'm Edward Moody.
And Trish Williford, a recently created petition calls for the removal of one longtime Horry County deputy coroner claiming misconduct in two separate cases.
New at 11, News 13's Adriana Lawrence sat down with that deputy coroner who says she feels she did nothing wrong.
A petition which already received 1,100 signatures was recently created by a supporter of Chris Skinner and Scott Spivey's family. The families have questioned the investigations into the deaths of their loved ones. Skinner's family said while they had nothing to do with the petition, they support getting what they call justice.
I think that it's empowering, but I also think it's sad. I think it's sad that two people have lost their lives and that there has been injustice done to both.
On September 9th, 2023, authorities said a deadly road rage shooting along Highway 9 and Camp Swamp Road led to the death of Scott Spivey. Horry County Police said the accused gunman, Weldon Boyd, acted in self-defense and was never charged. The Attorney General's office also declined to prosecute, citing insufficient evidence. Since then, Spivey's family accused one of Horry County's top police officials and a friend of Boyd's with tampering with the case. Authorities said the night of the shooting, Spivey's body was left in his truck and towed to the county police department in Conway. The coroner's office said while it's rare, it was a collective decision by the coroner's office to move the scene to avoid an incoming rainstorm and help keep officers safe from a busy road. The petition accuses the coroner's office of leaving Spivey's body inside his vehicle for 6 hours in the late summer heat. But Chief Deputy Coroner Tamara Willard says she's not sure that's true, but added she was out of town the day of the shooting.
I guess talk about what happens to the body within that 6 hours of the
I don't know that that's accurate. We're not going to answer to that because I don't think that's accurate.
The other case dates back to September 6, 2021, when Chris Skinner, a quadriplegic man, drowned in his neighborhood pool. Video shows he was underwater for about 40 minutes before first responders pulled him out. Police questioned Skinner's wife at the time, Susie, who claimed Skinner was not suicidal and his death was ruled an accident. Since then, accusations have swirled claiming Susie had an affair before Skinner's death with Myrtle Beach pastor John Paul Miller, and Skinner was having suicidal thoughts. Miller has also been under scrutiny since his wife Micah's suicide in April 2024, many claiming Miller was abusive towards Micah and also drove her to her death. He's now under investigation by the FBI. Because of these ties, Skinner's sister Tamara McDermott questioned her brother's death and inconsistencies in police and coroner reports.
I was not notified about Chris Skinner's death until several hours after this incident occurred because, again, I'm notified. We are notified by the hospital when a death occurs at the hospital, and he was pulled from that pool and taken to Grand Strand Hospital and lived on life support for several hours.
The coroner's...
What does that have to do with the price of tea in friggin' China? If the hospital calls the time of death, which would be an MD, and he passes away, then your job is, at that point, to go investigate where he died, why he died, and you're supposed to, according to South Carolina law, because he's a vulnerable adult and did not die in his home, you were supposed to investigate his home for abuse or neglect. You failed to do it. So what the hell does it have to do with that he died in the hospital? Nothing. You know why she does all this talking? To make it sound like she knows what she's doing. You know what she sounds like? An idiot.
Office reopened his case earlier this year, but said no one had any questions about Skinner's cause or manner of death based on the information given by Skinner's wife. McDermott said the coroner's office did not do its own investigation before determining a cause of death. But Willard said they trusted the word of the detectives on scene, the hospital, and her own conversation with Susie. McDermott said since the reopening of the case, she feels misled and deceived by Willard.
She did tell me she was going to wrap everything up in mid-February. She was going to have the manner of death changed, and she was going to have Susie Skinner charged. And those were her words, not my words.
McDermott said during a February interview with Susie, key questions were not asked as promised by Willard.
She was going to ask Susie, did the two of them in their alleged affair cause my brother to potentially do what he did? That question was never asked in Susie's interview, as well as she was going to ask Susie why she told the police in 2021 that no family, that Susie said at the scene that no family lived in town. She told me she was going to ask her that, and it was not done.
McDermott said outside of the petition, she plans to take other steps to hold Willard accountable.
They can say whatever they want. There's not much we can do to stop them. All we can do is just continue to do the best job that we can. The community knows it. We'll be fine.
Now,
The community knows it, absolutely. And let me tell you something, your community wants you gone. The community deserves better than you. The community deserves better than a coroner and a deputy coroner in a police department that protects criminals. That's what the community who's paying you deserves better than you.
Willard said the FBI has been reviewing Skinner's case since March. You can find a link to the petition on our website, wbtw.com. In the newsroom, Adriana Lawrence, News 13. But Willard said they trusted the word of the detectives on scene, the hospital, and her own conversation with Susie.
By the way, that text is now evidence. If I were you, Miss Willard, I'd go get myself a lawyer.
I believe you had told me, and maybe I'm wrong, but maybe you had told me that she had indicated there wasn't any family in town.
She did, but I didn't talk to her about any of that because remember he died so many hours later, and that she'd already been interviewed by the police department.
But I thought you just told the news that you did talk to her, and it was a combination of what Susie said. Oh, wait a minute, maybe it wasn't Susie. Maybe it was really John Paul. You know, you got a little bit of lie and a little bit of truth mixed in there, huh? Okie dokie.
Right, but do you know, I looked
Which
at the
means
video.
they have to go in and say that she lied. See,
In the
the
summer
police
before he died.
officers should have done that before I ever got involved, before he ever died. I mean, you know, but we can only take what people tell us, and I wasn't there to listen to those interviews because, again, I wasn't notified of it till, you know.
The police officers are supposed to get involved with what before he died? Why he was in the pool? Okay. And why didn't you question them on why they didn't investigate the reason why he was found in the pool? Why didn't you ask them? Why wasn't there any kind of investigation into that? You just took their word for it.
Till 3 or 4 hours after he was taken in. Because I don't know what the police department has in their report as of yet because I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
I only spoke to the detective.
Before we go on with that, so what have we done as armchair quarterback investigators in both the Micah Miller and Chris Skinner case? We have gone over document after document, incident report after incident report, 911 calls, witness statements, court records. We actually look into evidence when we report on these things, and this woman did none of that. And who's the professional here? Okay, oops. All right, so let me get rid of that real quick. So let's go over a few things. Because like I said, I think this has opened up a Pandora's box. Now, The only states that I know of at this point that has coroner-only systems is Kentucky, Montana, North Dakota, Arkansas, Mississippi, Idaho, Nevada, Colorado, Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, and South Carolina. Now, the coroner system has its origins in medieval England. What? Okay, where a coroner was a royal judicial representative, and their primary duty was to collect money that was due to the monarchy. Usually this was through the collection of taxes and fees. But if someone died in a way that was deemed sudden or unnatural, the coroner was called upon to investigate the death and determine whether it was murder or a suicide. At this time in history, both murder and suicide were considered crimes against the crown. Okay? This is where it starts. We're talking about medieval times. Okay? Now, the coroner performing these deaths investigations in medieval England through the colonial period, when the coroner system was brought to North America, was not typically a trained medical professional. Okay, but we're talking about centuries ago. For nearly 3 centuries in early America, the methodology behind death investigations remained unchanged. Coroners were lay persons who had jurisdiction in a particular county or city, and a person's appointment to the position was inherently political. The first law in the United States that required a medically trained physician to participate in a death investigation was passed in Maryland in 1860. 8 years later, a physician coroner, which is a coroner with medical training rather than a lay coroner with no medical training, was appointed in Baltimore County. In 1877, Massachusetts made history when it replaced the lay coroner's office with a medical examiner, the first of its kind. To this day in the United States, the death investigation system is not universal. There is what many would call a patchwork system for death investigations that can vary from state to state and even from county to county. Some states continue to have coroners while others have medical examiners. And this is according to the, hold on, I'm going to give you right now, National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. So I named to you the states that still have, and I believe the reason why they still have coroner only is to protect corruption. It's going to cost more money, yes, to have a coroner be a medical examiner, true. But even in a situation where you had them working for the police department, it was a medically trained firefighter, medically trained paramedic, medically trained nurse, you have a better chance of having professionalism rather than what we're seeing right here. This is someone who has no idea what she's doing and should not be in that position at all. The proof is in these 2 cases. God only knows how many other cases are out there of people in South Carolina, in the Myrtle Beach area, even saying, this woman you have no idea how she screwed up on my loved one's death. Please, if you hear my voice and you know of any of these cases, come forward because we'd love to hear from you. Okay. Now, I talked to you about professionalism in law enforcement being defined as an exercise of developed skill of proficiency in performing tasks, particularly those involving crime solving, crime prevention, and social control with a complex pluralistic society. I read that to you earlier. Now, when somebody passes away, we refer to that their pathologists are usually medical examiners, like they are involved in pathology. And pathology is the scientific study of nature, causes, and effects of diseases, and it involves examination of structural and functional changes in organs, tissues, cells, bodily fluids that result from disease. Pathology serves as a bridge between science and medicine, underpinning patient care through diagnostic testing, treatment guidance, and research into disease prevention and cure. But the medical definition of a human death is generally accepted as the irreversible cessation of all the functions, the entire brain, including the brainstem, and a standard known as the whole brain criterion. The definition is codified in the Uniform Determination of Death Act, UDDA, which states that an individual is dead if they have sustained either irreversible cessation of circulatory and respiratory functions or irreversible cessation of all functions of the entire brain including the brainstem. This standard is widely used in legal and medical contexts to determine death. Okay. Now, that is some may argue and say, well, that has to determine his time of death. No. All of that information has to do with manner of death. And if you don't have any training in either one of those industries, legal mixed with medical, mostly medical, you should have absolutely nothing to do with a death investigation. Nothing. You have okay. A lawyer would have known. Let me look at, because the law states he was a vulnerable person. He was because that's what the law says. He was in a wheelchair, he was wheelchair bound. He was found inside a pool. So the law states, in the state that I'm living in at the very moment, because I'm a deputy coroner, I should know this, that I am supposed to find out why he was found in that pool. Why was he in that pool? Not because the wife said, the detective said, the guy in 7-Eleven said. No, you're supposed to go and not take people's words for it. You're supposed to get your ass out there and go look and find out why his chair was in that pool. The law states that if he's found anywhere else other than his home, you're supposed to investigate the home for neglect and abuse. You did not. Now, you said in 2025 that you didn't take the word of Susie back then. You didn't speak to Susie. But on the media, you said that you had a collection of what you heard from the detectives, what was in the police report, and then what you heard from Susie. So which one is it? You talked to Susie, you didn't talk to Susie. Which one is it? I think in 2021, the person you did speak to was John Paul Miller. Now, if that's the case, what does that mean? Why would John Paul Miller be giving her a narrative like he did with Mike Miller? To protect criminality. Now, what criminality could there possibly be? His own with the remote control? Potentially. We've already proven that can be done over and over and over again. Or protection of Susie, that her neglect is what caused him to go over the edge and take his own life, which you could get up to 30 years in prison. Maybe John Paul Miller knows the law better than the deputy coroner. Yeah, I like that too. Yeah, I do too. Yeah. Well, Mary, that's what we're doing. So like I said, I feel like there's a Pandora's box to open here. And it's, to me, there just seems to, somebody who's medically professional, I am more trained than this woman is by far. And I only have certification as an RMA, okay, and a phlebotomist, and then have experience as paramedical examiner for 14 years. And the paramedical examiner is not a medical examiner. Paramedical examiner is somebody who does cognitive reviews for Medicare patients. We do DNA testing. We do full medical, physicals and exams and specimen collection for various reasons. And that's what we would do. We would just take whatever we were given for that day, and we would go and see patients for whatever reason we were called out. We worked for a specific company that took on all of these different cases, and we would go and just do those cases. Okay. I saw the patient once, never saw them again. Okay. And so you had to have medical training to do that. You had to. For DNA testing, it wasn't just that you were taking a test. There were times where these examiners would have to go into court and talk about chain of custody of that DNA test, and they would have to prove chain of custody. Okay, so documentation is extremely important, and so in this situation, this woman did not care at all about documentation. She didn't even look at it, didn't even look at the witness statements, didn't even bother, didn't even look at the fact that there was one person who even said that he's been at this pool numerous times. He knew his way around there. There was really no reason for him to accidentally be in that pool. Okay, if she would have looked at, if she was a real deputy coroner, okay, if she was really somebody who was trained and she was doing her job through integrity, not because she's being paid by John Paul Miller. If she was doing her job, she would have looked at that tape. She would have looked at that video. She would have seen what we saw. She would have said, there's no way there's an accident here. Why is the wife saying it's an accident? There's no way it's an accident. She's not even near the wheel didn't slip in. What the hell are we looking at here? And then she would have questioned it. And plus, she would have known the law. And she does it. We know it. I've said it time and time again on here. She would have gone to his home. She would have, from witness statements and from family members, she would have learned that Susie had given up on him almost a year in on caring for him, cleaning for him, feeding him, giving him his medicines on time, which she admits, and then turns around and lies to law enforcement, as she says, impeding a law investigation. So if she impeded an investigation, a police investigation, why wasn't she arrested? You caught her in that lie. Because I believe coroners and deputy coroners that have no legal law enforcement or medical training, they're just voted in, as they say, it's a political position, that are still in these handful of states, are there to protect corruption. The end. You can't convince me of anything else. Think of the state that you're in. If you happen to be in a state right now where, God forbid, you or your loved one pass away, you're found on the living room floor, okay? And you know that it's a suspicious death, God forbid. And you know that the police are going to show up and the ME is going to show up. And that ME, like we've seen before, on Quincy and all these other shows that we've seen on television, they investigate. Why was this person found here the way they were? What happened? Who's responsible? Did they do this to themselves? They don't just take, the detective told me and that was it. And in a day and age of that, everything is recorded and there's videos all over the place. I mean, 2021 is not that long ago. She had plenty of video there to give her an idea of how he got to that point where he was sitting, and then how he went into the water. And me and Callie have mentioned, I don't know how many times in the past 2 weeks, why wasn't he able to stand up in the very chair, this waterproof chair that's able to stand straight up? Why didn't he stand straight up then? Because he couldn't control the chair. And see, if she was really investigating, she would have found that out. It took Callie from Fitz News and me from Axiom, which just started in 2024, really pretty much 2025. And I started on this in June of 2024. Yeah, you're right. I am an armchair quarterback investigator who has absolutely more intelligence and integrity than you do, Miss Willard, because I was able to figure out that he was most likely remote controlled into that pool. And you've got a witness who says they remember John Paul Miller saying to him, Chris, you know what? Maybe we should really, I should really remote control your chair. Why would he want to remote control his chair? Did you question John Paul Miller and why he had that conversation with Chris? And what his fascination was with wanting to remote control his chair? Or is he really your boss? Well, welcome to the live. Time will tell. Thank you. Thank you for being here. I believe that federal is already involved. First of all, you have to remember the FBI is already investigating Micah's case. The FBI is already investigating Chris's case. I believe they're going to find connections to both, because both people are seeing each other. Well, they're actually allegedly married to each other. And so I believe that the feds are working very hard with bringing this all together. And eventually, we will see that. I don't believe for 1 minute that the feds are going to just drop the ball on this, because they're not going to be able to. Okay, we're not depending on the Myrtle Beach FBI here. Okay, we're depending on the federal level DOJ and FBI. This has petition, truth strips, laws, coroner training manual, and procedural. Okay. The same. Many have medical as well as law enforcement backgrounds. This should not be a direct reflection on how investigations are handled in every county. That's just not fair. No, absolutely not. It's absolutely time to change the law. And coroners in the other states that I did not mention are medical examiners. So they're both. So they're not ill-equipped. Okay, if you're a coroner or a deputy coroner and you have neither a law enforcement degree or a medical degree, you should not be in your position. And I had just read that those states still have coroners and obviously deputy coroners, if they have the coroner, who are not trained. They're politically put into position. And that should not be so. Politicians should not be, and people involved in politics, okay, directly, and that's it, should have anything to do with a death investigation. They don't have the understanding of what an investigation entails and how to investigate. That would be on a law enforcement side of things, and a medical examiner is trained for both. They're trained on how to investigate a death investigation, how to investigate, but they use not just the patient's being, their body, and blood and tissue and whatnot, and then an examination of the outer part of the body and sometimes inside through autopsy, but they also go and investigate by speaking to families, speaking to witnesses, looking at the scene. She didn't do any of that. She didn't do any of that. And why? Because she probably doesn't need to. I believe that any coroner that is not medically or law enforcement trained in any of these states that I mentioned earlier, which is only a handful, are there to protect corruption. Why else would they be there? What would be the reason? What would be the reason? Why have somebody there that is ill-equipped? Here we go. I call coroners often on my job, and it's very in-depth and, to be honest, exhausting. Because he asks so many questions. We must notify coroner when any death, even in hospitals, 24 hours. And this is in Michigan. Okay. And Michigan was, I don't think, one of the states that I mentioned. Did I? Did I mention Michigan? Let me see. Nope, it's not one of the states. The states are Kentucky, Montana, North Dakota, Arkansas, Mississippi, Idaho, Nevada, Colorado, Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, and South Carolina. So you know what that means? That means that your coroner has medical training. And that's why they ask so many very in-depth and exhausting questions. That's why. Because they're investigating. They need to come to a conclusion, to come to an actual true death, manner of death. How are you going to come to a manner of death without even looking into the evidence that's given in a person's? It's one thing if they're in the hospital and they're sick and they have a diagnosis and in the hospital they die. There really isn't anything to investigate there, okay? Unless they came in by poison or there was an accident, different story. But in a situation like this, you've got a vulnerable adult in a wheelchair in his 40s, if I'm not mistaken, early 40s, goes from motivational speaker to in a 5-foot pool, a pool that he's been to many, many, many times, according to the witnesses. Okay? She says, the deputy coroner, well, we don't understand. This just came out of the blue. We figured it was an accident because this is what the wife said, or allegedly the wife said. I think it's the boyfriend, John Paul Miller, and said that, he was doing great. He was going to events. There was nothing wrong. Everything was normal. Everything was natural. Everything was great. That just shows you this woman had no clue what was going on in Chris's life. Okay? What did the detectives tell her? What did the detective even investigate? If she's coming back with, and go look at all the truth drips, because she says that. She says that at the police questioning, where the police are there and they're interviewing, and she says it. She says, well, we don't understand. He was doing so great. There was no evidence, or maybe it was on the phone. I can't remember. And he was doing so great, and he was going to all these events. No, he wasn't. If she really looked at the witness statements, they all said he wasn't. For a year. She's not trained to investigate. She's not trained for anything. And that's really the bottom line. And if you're not trained, law enforcement or medical, you should not have that position. And so because this is really considered medical, because we're talking about the death of a human being, no matter how you put it, no matter the manner of death, I think that the federal level needs to make a decision. And there's laws out there, healthcare laws, that I think would protect these areas from defending, keeping coroners and deputy coroners in position just merely because of political decisions. They absolutely have to be trained. Absolutely. Otherwise, there's no other reason to think, why would she be in this position? Why is she in that position? Who put her in that position? The coroner, who happens to be her cousin, okay, has been there 30 years. I'd love to hear from that area, and even the areas of those other states, of people that live in these states. How do the death investigations go under these untrained coroners? Do you have any deaths that a lot of you walked away going, that's not what happened? They didn't even bother to look into it. Or you didn't agree with the end of their investigation and you feel that they didn't do enough? I would love to know. But in Myrtle Beach, Horry County, we've already proven time and time again through the Micah Miller case that they are extremely unprofessional and corrupt, especially the Myrtle Beach Police Department. We know that they work hand in hand with John Paul Miller. And so it sounds as if she said one thing to Tamara, Chris's sister, to kind of blow her off and shut her up, and then did another thing to keep her bosses, which I believe is the corrupt people of Myrtle Beach, happy, especially John Paul Miller. I think in 2021, John Paul Miller was the one who gave her the narrative, and that's what she flew with. Either her or the detective. I don't see any other reason to think that there's anything else going on. So, yes, there is a petition, and I want to share that petition. Well, you know what I'm going to do after the show? I will put the petitions in the chat that I'd like for you to sign. And I think that we need to start looking into. I got to figure out how I'm going to do this and how I'm going to approach the federal level with something needs to be done about these coroners in these different states, especially South Carolina, in light of what's happened with Chris Skinner and Scott Spivey. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not really thrilled with how Robeson County handled Michael Miller either. There shouldn't have been a nurse involved at all. I really believe it needs to be a doctor, an MD. I don't care if he's playing golf. I don't care if he's playing with himself in the bathroom. That's his job. He needs to, when he's called to a death scene, he needs to show up. The end. If he can't do it, then you get another doctor to take his place. I don't care how many residents you have and what you get paid in taxes and all this other nonsensical BS. We need to have better in our law enforcement, and we need to have better with the people who are, in our communities and are supposed to be taking care of us and our families. So this is the time under this administration to get these things done. So anyway, thank you guys for joining me. I will let you know what I come up with. I'll figure something out. In the interim, please help with the online protests that are being done every day. If you cannot share them on YouTube, or if you don't know how to share them on Facebook, then please pick up the phone and call the FBI, email the FBI, do what you got to do, but get in touch with the FBI. And just keep letting them hear the names Mike Miller and Chris Skinner, Michael Miller, Chris Skinner, until they get to a point where they can't take it anymore and do something. Also, I'm going to, like I said, share with you the petitions. I'm going to share with you the new website for the Truth Drip. Please also follow the Truth Drip on YouTube channel. That will keep you updated with the new drips that is being put out on the Chris Skinner case. And it will also show you what's happening, on the news, the local news. She's kind enough to share that with everybody as well. And so until I'm, have more information for you guys, until something new comes up, please stay safe, stay in prayer, and I will see you soon. Thank you for joining me, and God bless.